All right, Chapter 13, the reliability of witnesses. But first, a few words about election. Because it looks like it's over. Today's the day, Sunday, and they finally figured it out. Of course, Trump has not conceded, but nobody expects him to be normal now. He hasn't been normal for 4 years. And what I can't imagine, so on January 20, when Biden is sworn in, he has to put his hand on the Bible. I swear I will become blah, 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 blah. And then, all the ex-president is always right there. If you look in the history pictures, when Trump was there, Trump's doing this, and Trump's wife, and there's Obama's wife, but I can't imagine Trump being there. He'll be, I won. He'll be home, like, pouting, or maybe in jail, maybe dead. That'd be nice. So he got 7 million more votes last time, Trump did. And in 2016, a lot of people thought Hillary was going to win easily. So they think, oh, so it doesn't matter, she's going to win, so I can just, waste my vote or vote for some third party or vote for Trump, just, kind of as a non-serious vote. So last time he got less kind of real serious Trump voters, right? Some people were voting just kind of just to be against Hillary, not because they like Trump. But now this time, that wasn't the case. If you voted for Trump, you really liked Trump. So that's kind of disturbing, because you know what he's like, before, oh, he's not a politician, that's why he'll be a breath of fresh air, he'll change things. He's a successful businessman, been bankrupt like 6 times or something like that. So basically that party, it's a white nationalist fascist party, the GOP, the Republicans, right? And that's what, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they won't say that because they have to have both sides. Otherwise, they won't have that's their whole thing of, they have to show things as a horse race, right? It's always a race. It's an election, and they love this delayed election results. CNN and those major media group, they love this. There's so many people watching now. It's like, money. Because that's what they are. They're about making money. They're not interested in the public good is not what their main focus is. They talk about that, blah, 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 but it's all about money. If they're not making money, they don't exist. So they don't really have the same goals and ideals as regular people do. So also what helped is the pandemic. As you know, there's the delayed counting votes, but the fact that so many people voted by mail means they voted by paper. And before, under Bush, there's been some questionable things with the election machines, the electronic ballots, as they're called. So those are not so reliable, and they've done studies, and those they're easy to hack, the software. But because so many people voted by paper, it makes it a more concrete result. So, but the big news, as I'm sure you know, or you don't, but so there's a runoff. So the Senate is still tied. So if the Republicans control the Senate, they're going to block probably everything that Biden did, just like they did under Obama for 6 or 8 years, as much as they could. But there's a runoff in, I think, in 2 states, Georgia and somewhere else, in January. So if the Democrats can win those, or at least get 50-50, if it's a tie, and then they have the vice president comes in and makes the extra vote if there's a tie, and that's always going to go to the Democrats because they have the presidency now. So they're still not over, and that's going to be about 2 more months, that campaign. And that's going to be super important. And so Kamala Harris, I don't know if I told you, she is 2 years younger than me. We were born in the same hospital. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Oakland, California, Kaiser Hospital. I'm not sure what room, what bed, but we were born in the same hospital. So yeah. And actually, my old girlfriend in Santa Cruz, or my university, she went to grammar school with her. She didn't really know her, but she was in the same grammar school, I think, same year or 1 year difference. But I don't have any contact with her anymore, but I know she's put that on Facebook that they were classmates or something like that. So that's right. Me, I have a connection to the most powerful office in the world. And if you think this doesn't affect you, well, wake up, because the world is now more interconnected than ever. There's almost a nuclear war. You know, Obama told Trump the biggest crisis you're going to have to deal with is North Korea, when they met before Trump took over. So everyone's going to wait and see. North Korea is probably going to fire a missile. They're going to try to do the same old story, try to see what they can do, try to scare people to get negotiating concessions. But and you're in college now to hear different points of view, right? You're not in high school. You're not in this little hagwon bubble that you've been in your whole life. So it's a big world, and if you've traveled or if you will travel, you know, it's good to know about things, because there's been a lot of criticism of Korean students, like at international global warming conferences, for example. Somebody wrote this in the Korea paper a year or two ago. They went to this climate change conference about all these young student leaders, and there were no Koreans there. Zero. I was like, what? You know, Korea's a leader, you know, it's one of the biggest economies in the world. Also one of the biggest contributors to climate change as far as pollution goes. And you have all this green offices, UN green offices in Songdo, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of talk, but you have to walk the walk. Where are you? And you have to be aware of these global things. And it definitely will affect you. It's going to affect me, because when we move back to America, as far as my wife becoming a citizen now, it's going to be much easier, because under Trump, he had a really, really, really evil racist advisor on immigration, Stephen Miller. He looks like, if you watch The Simpsons, Mr. Burns, Frank Burns, Homer's boss, he looks like him. You look him up, he has just this evil face. Ugh. So he's gone. Right? And he just was all about white people and put babies in cages, actually in cages, separate them from their parents when they come to America. Not illegally, because the rule is the law is once you come to America, if you want to apply for asylum, there's a process, right? So they're not illegal just coming over, but later it's determined if they can stay legally or not. If not, then they have to go back. But in the meantime, they're putting them in cages, right? So anyway, that's my rant for now. So let's go to the reliability of witnesses. Reliability of witnesses in chapter 13. So this relates to a current story in Korea you might have heard this week. Yoon Seong-Yeo. Does that ring a bell? Yoon Seong-Yeo. Probably not. You're probably more concerned with Park Ji-sun, that entertainer who killed herself. Very sad. But this guy, he was just like in this story. So he was accused of murdering and raping some girls. And that mass murderer from the Suwon mass murderer, he finally admitted that, no, I did it. He did not do it. But he already spent 20 years in jail, and he was released, or paroled, is a word you'll have to know, in 2009. And then the Suwon killer just said that, no, I did it, I confessed. And so this guy wants a retrial. He wants to go to trial again so his name can be cleared, because he is obviously not guilty. So I don't know the details of this case, but I don't know if they actually used, eyewitnesses who said they saw one thing, but actually they didn't see what they thought they saw, like that. Anyhow, this happens, and it's imagine that. Imagine spending 20 years in jail and knowing that you're innocent. All right. So on page 175. So those first two questions. Types of evidence, murder, bank robbery. Let's just do this. So what I do in a normal class, when there's no pandemic, is we come up, brainstorm, you guys come up with a list of crimes, all the different crimes that you know, and then we make a list of them. So here's what students have come up with. In the past, shoplifting, which is kind of funny. It's not like you're lifting up the whole shop, the store. That means stealing, when you steal things from inside of a store, like when you go to the 7-Eleven and you put a piece of candy in your pocket, you don't pay. That's called shoplifting. And it's funny. So Americans say store, not store lifting, but just we go to the store, and the British generally say shops. They call it shops. Go down to the shop. Jaywalking, a crime when you're walking. If you walk across the street, against the red light, or not in the crosswalk where you're supposed to walk, that's jaywalking. Speeding, that's a driving thing. Littering, L-I-T-T-E-R. To litter, the verb is to throw your trash, not in the garbage, right? To litter. And then littering is the crime, which is a crime. There's signs in America on the highway, $1,000 fine for littering. It's taken seriously. DUI, driving under the influence. It's drunk driving. Assault and battery. That's when you hit someone and you take things from them. So don't worry, there's a list of these on our classroom. There's domestic violence, hitting your spouse. There's kidnapping. Kidnapping is when basically you're stealing a person. Plagiarism. Most of you probably know what that means, when you take somebody's ideas, you copy their ideas. Breaking and entering. That's another way, like a burglar. A burglar is the person who is breaking and entering a business or a house in order to steal. Shoplifting. So there's a slang term called the 5-finger discount. Can you imagine what that means? My 5 fingers, I take this. It's a 5-finger discount. It's the same as shoplifting, but it's kind of slang. Hit and run. I think, what's that baseball player that played for Pittsburgh? Kang Jung-ho. He was in trouble for hit and run, I think, drunk driving, but also he hit someone, I think, and then didn't stay. He left. He ran or drove away. So hit and run made that worse. Fraud is like you're cheating at something. You say, I'll say this painting, it's real, it's signed by the artist, but actually it's not real, it's fake. So that's fraud, when you kind of misrepresent something that's not what you say it is. And forgery. Forgery is when you, if you try to go to the bank and use my bank account and you have to sign. So you sign my name, John Griffin. You're forging my name, my signature. That's forgery. Arson. Arson is the guy who burned down Namdaemun, some old guy years ago. When you light a fire on purpose, intentionally, that's arson. Adultery. That's actually funny. There's something in the paper. Adultery is, if you're married and having sex with someone else you're not married to. That's actually now legal in Korea, but actually getting a tattoo is still illegal, technically. Of course, there's lots of tattoo places. So there's another article in the paper recently saying, what? Getting a tattoo is illegal, but adultery is now legal, technically. Public drunkenness. In many places, that's a crime. If you believe that or not, that doesn't make sense, because how much money is spent advertising alcohol, it's so glamorized in the media. Yet a lot of towns, there's rules about public drunkenness, if you're drunk in public. But wait a minute, I went to a bar, I went to a party, I'm drunk, so I'm not driving. Yeah. Embezzlement. That's when you're taking money secretly from the company or something. To embezzlement. And the last one, of course, is bullying. And now there's cyberbullying. So there's a list of all these crimes. You can find those on our classroom site. All right. So also in the chapter 13, the picture there. So what's happening is he is giving her a ticket, right? That's all. It's very simple. He's giving her a ticket. What kind of ticket? Don't know. Probably a what's called a moving vehicle violation. If you're driving, some kind of moving vehicle violation. don't know, but he's giving her a ticket. She is getting a ticket. I got a ticket. And the other picture, this is a police lineup. You have to line up and they see your size, and the witnesses come in and tries to identify you. And the police, another slang term for the police is the popo. If you might have heard that in some of that young rap music you listen to. All right, so now I'll read the main reading about Bernard Jackson. And again, I'm sorry, this book, a lot of us like, why do we have to study this chapter? Why? This is about rape, right? Rape is a very serious crime. It's a sexual crime. It's like, why? This is one of the 6 chapters they want us to, it's mandatory. That's what the final exam, you're tested on one of these chapters. A lot of us don't like that, but we're not making the rule, so sorry about that. I don't think it's a very pleasant thing to. There's many things to talk about, right? Look at all the things we're talking about as far as learning English, the writings you get to do, except a rape case. Anyway, here we go. So page 176. The reliability of witnesses. Bernard Jackson is a free man today, but he has many bitter memories, unhappy memories, bitter memories. Jackson spent 5 years in prison after a jury wrongly convicted him of raping 2 women. So prison and jail. So jail is like if you're arrested, and then if it's a serious crime, you have to stay in jail until your trial. And then if you're found guilty, you're convicted, right? That's what happens. Convictions when the judge says you are guilty. So that means you are convicted. You have been convicted. You are guilty and convicted. Then you go to prison. Like Shawshank Redemption, that's a prison. That's for long term. But jail is kind of a short-term thing, just between the crime and the trial. But if it's a very minor thing, then you can get out of jail and you're on bail. It's called, you have to pay a bit of money, and then you can just make sure you come back for the trial. So prison versus jail. Long term is prison, short term is jail. Next, line 3, at Jackson's trial, although 2 witnesses testified that Jackson was with them in another location at the time of the crimes, he was convicted anyways. So testified, that comes from testimony, right? When you testify, it's a person that you come up there and I swear I will tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. One hand's on the Bible, right hand on the Bible, right? So they testified is the verb, but testimony is the noun, and the person, they say what happened, right? The witnesses testify. Why? Line 5. The jury, what is that? That's 12 people that decide what happened. So the judge basically is a referee. You have the 2 lawyers, like the government, the prosecutor, and the defendant. The prosecutor is the government side. The defender is defending the person who they think is guilty. So they just go back and forth. You've seen this in movies and TV shows, the lawyers for each side, and the judge just kind of as a referee, he says, oh, you can't say that, or that is not allowed, it's not admissible in court, so disregard that, etc. And then the jury is the one that actually makes a final decision, right? So they're the ones that the lawyers are trying to influence. And then when the jury finally gives their opinion, like guilty, not guilty, and then the judge, he gives the sentence. Not the sentence like in paragraphs, but like how long is the punishment in prison, right? So, line 5, the jury believed the testimony of the 2 victims who positively identified Jackson as the man who had attacked them. The court eventually freed Jackson after the police found the man who had really committed the crimes. So that's what you do. You don't do a crime, you commit crimes. He committed murder, he committed arson. You commit a crime. And you see there they use free, the verb free in the past tense. Line 7, eventually, finally, after a long time, freed him. Continuing in line 8. Jackson was similar in appearance to the guilty man. The 2 women had made a mistake in identity. Or you could say it's a case of mistaken identity, or they made a mistake in identity. As a result, Jackson has lost 5 years of his life. Not as many as Yoon Seong-Yeo. Line 11. The two women in this case were eyewitnesses. They saw what happened with their own eyes, right? They clearly saw the man who attacked them, yet they mistakenly identified an innocent person. Similar incidents. So not happenings, not events, but incident. That's what it, like the police would write an incident report. You know, what happened, what described the incident. So oftentimes people, Koreans say, you know, they describe a happening or this happening, but that's wrong. So this is an incident. Please describe the incident. Line 13. Eyewitnesses to other crimes have identified the wrong person in a police lineup or photographs. So remember on the first page, that's a police lineup when you stand in line, and there's usually a one-way mirror. You can, someone, the witness or whatever, can come in and try to find the person they think they saw. All right. So next page. Many factors influence the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. For instance, witnesses sometimes see photographs of several suspects before they try to identify the person they saw in a lineup of people. They can become confused by seeing many photographs or similar faces. The number of people in a lineup, and whether it's a live lineup or photograph, may also affect a witness's decision. People sometimes have difficulty identifying people of other races. The questions the police ask witnesses also have an effect on them. So those are all reasons why the eyewitness testimony could not be so accurate. So the first one, line 16, sometimes if you go through a book or page after page after page of people, and you kind of get tired and you see so many similar faces, that could have make your testimony not so accurate. Or seeing, like I said, or seeing someone before that even, right? So that kind of, you prejudge that just by seeing a picture before the actual person. Just the number of people in a lineup, and whether it's live or pictures, if you're looking at the real people or just pictures of the people, because that may affect their decision. And then also identifying people of other races. So I always thought that was funny when I first came to Korea. Like, Koreans would tell me, that Western people look alike. I was like, really? But Koreans, you can judge each other, right, very well because you're Korean. I have a good eye now. I can tell Chinese and Japanese and Korean apart mostly. But anyway, that's a thing. And also the questions the police ask. Sometimes just by the question they ask, they can kind of lead the person to make this decision or conclusion when it may not be the actual real person. Okay, so that's key. Those are some reasons there. Those are important things to know, that paragraph. Next, line 22. Are some witnesses more reliable than others? Many people believe that police officers are more reliable than ordinary people. Psychologists decided to test this idea, and they discovered that it is not true. Two psychologists showed a film of crimes to both police officers and civilians. The psychologists found no difference between the police and the civilians in correctly remembering the details of the crimes. Same. Despite all the possibilities for inaccuracy, courts cannot exclude eyewitness testimony from a trial. So include, exclude. They can't keep it out of the trial. Include, exclude. American courts depend almost completely on eyewitness testimony to resolve court cases, to solve them. Sometimes it is the only evidence to a crime, such as rape. Furthermore, eyewitness testimony is often correct. Well, yeah. Although people do sometimes make mistakes, many times they really do identify individuals correctly. So yeah, most of the time it happens, but there are cases where it doesn't happen, and there's a lot of factors in that. Okay, next they're talking about the jury system. American courts depend on the ability of the 12 jurors, not the judges, to determine the accuracy of the witness's testimony. So like I said before, the jury has 12 people, and those are jurors. There are 12 jurors. It is their responsibility to decide if a certain witness could actually see, hear, and remember what occurred. In a few cases, the testimony of eyewitnesses has convicted innocent people. More importantly, it has rightly convicted a larger number of guilty people. Consequently, as a result, it continues to be of great value in the American judicial system. Yeah. I've watched a couple things recently on Netflix. Surprise. One is about the Chicago 7. It's a famous court case from the 1960s where the judge was really, really bad, and he was later almost fired or something. And so this nonsense about the American judicial system is so great. It's like, really? There's a lot of suspicious things go on. And also the another one is about the O.J. Simpson, which happened before you were born. It was pre-internet. But if it happened nowadays, when the internet, you would hear about this nonstop forever. But anyways, there's also a 6-part series about that. It's kind of long, but it's pretty good. He was a famous American football player, TV announcer. He was doing lots of commercials. He was black, but he lived in L.A. He had a white wife. So he was basically a black person living a white man's life. He went to famous golf country clubs, and he got in because he was a famous player. They usually don't allow blacks or Jews, or a lot of clubs don't. So he had a lot of white friends. He was basically living like a white person. He had a white wife. And the black community, they see that he's kind of a traitor, right? He was too much of a Mr. Television, Mr. kind of living in a white man's world, not living the life like a typical black American. Although he came from a poor family, he was just good at football, became famous, and he was kind of charismatic. And it's pretty obvious he did kill his wife. That was what happened. Then he ran away in a car, and they cut away from the NBA Finals, like live TV, to show this car and this white Bronco. It's a white kind of van. He was driving down the highway, going to Mexico. He had money, he had guns, he had hair and fake mustache, fake beard. Like, obviously he's running away. But then he was talked out of it. But they were showing this on TV live. The helicopters were following him on the freeway, and the police didn't pull him over. They let him keep going. They were all following him, but they didn't pull him over. And you've seen these videos these days where they shoot and kill black people for nothing, running away with no gun, and they shoot them and kill them. So he was treated very, very differently, right? Because he was O.J. Simpson, he was a famous person. He was basically a celebrity. But then in the trial, so he was very obviously guilty. All the evidence was there. But the whole thing in the trial, they played what's called a race card. So basically they're saying, oh, he's black, and the police made some mistakes in the evidence collection, what they did. But still, it's obvious he was guilty. But anyway, he was let off. He was not convicted, and it was a big deal. I remember just came back from living in Panama. I was in the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. I was getting my license renewed. I just came back like 2 days after living in Panama, Central America, South America for 2 years. So I wasn't really adjusted to live American life. And I was there, and all of a sudden, like in the afternoon, they had the announcement on live on the radio on the speakers, and there was hundreds of people there. A lot of people, non-whites. There was a pretty mixed crowd. And suddenly they said he's not guilty, and everyone started cheering. Like almost everyone, just, oh yeah, he's not guilty. OJ's free. And I was like, wow, America, okay. Anyway, so those are two things if you want to know more about this someday in your life. Those are two good things to watch. But there's lots of TV crime dramas you've already seen about all this stuff. All right, so let's go on now to the next page, the comprehension questions. Number 1, what's the main idea of the passage? B, that's the most general statement. Number 2, according to the passage, which of the following factors influence eyewitnesses? So there's more than one answer. Go ahead and try to figure out what they are. Pause the video, and you're back. So, A, C, E, and H. Seeing many similar photographs. C, the questions the police ask. E, a live lineup or a photograph of a group of people. And last one, the race of the subject or suspect. Number 3, what are bitter memories? So B, but it could be C. Prison, if you were in prison, that would probably be a bitter memory, but B is the more general answer. Even A, angry memories, those are all kind of bitter. I mean, that could all be under the category. So, 4, what does testimony mean? A person's statement used for evidence. Number 1. So it's a person's statement. It's their words. When they testify, that's the verb. Testimony is the noun. What does victim refer to? Number 2, people against whom a crime has been committed. And in line 12, what does yet mean? Yet they mistakenly identified an innocent person. In this case, it means but. How do you know? It's in the book. I just told you. How do you know? 6, in line 15, what does for instance mean? Says many factors influence the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. For instance, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So, for example, right? That's when they give you a list of details. So it's for example, B. And lines 22, 25. Says they discovered that it is not true. And what is not true? So it's not true that the popo, the police, aren't more reliable than witnesses. Aren't more reliable witnesses than ordinary, average, or regular people. So it's weird how they say that. What is not true? So it's not true that the police aren't more reliable witnesses. That's a double negative. That means it's a positive. Police aren't more reliable. Sorry, that is written wrong in my book. Never mind that double negative. So it is not true that police are more reliable, right? People think that, but that's not true. Police are not more reliable. So it is not true that police are more reliable witnesses. All right, number 7B, what are civilians? Shimin, ordinary people. You and me, we're just civilians. Number 8, lines 28 to 33, what does despite mean? Despite all the possibilities, so it's the same as in spite of. Number 3, evidence, B is proof. It could be word, could be testimony, it could be pictures, it could be many things. Some hair, some blood sample, whatever. Oh, that's another thing about the O.J. Simpson trial, is that there was DNA, the whole DNA evidence thing. They had it was just before that became common. So if that happened nowadays, they could easily from the blood find out that he was guilty. But that kind of thing did not exist back in 1994, 95. Dinosaurs, right? And lines 35, 36. It is their responsibility to decide if. So who does their? Who is it their responsibility? We're talking about C, the jurors. The jurors decide. The jury decides. Okay, and next page. What does consequently mean? In lines 38 and 39, it means as a result. As a consequence. As a result. So now the next page, they have a wanted poster. This is kind of funny how they do this. Also, it's funny, he's also very skinny. So if you look at the description of him, it says below the picture of him, right? So the above is a sketch resembling. So remember, resembling is about appearance, not about character. If you say character, say he takes after. Like my son, he takes after me as far as my behavior, but he resembles my wife. Resembles is about appearance. So the above is a sketch resembling a suspect sought for an armed robbery that occurred on February 10, 2010 at 1:25 hours in the confines of the 13th precinct. The sketch is based on a description supplied by the victim. So the victim, they asked the victim what the man looked like, and they gave a description, and they came up with this sketch. So a description: white, male, 40 to 45 years, approximate height 6 feet 2. That's like 187, 188. That's about my height. 160 pounds. That's very light. How many kilos is that? It's 2.2 to 1. So 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds. So 22 pounds is 10 kilos. So half of 22 is 11, right? So 110 pounds is 50 kilos. So 110 and 132 is 60. 154 is 70 kilos. And then 6, that's about it's about 73 kilograms. That's how you do it. It's not that hard. 22, so 2.2 to 1. 2.2 pounds equals 1 kilogram. But I'm about 190, so I'm the same height, so he's pretty skinny. Because I'm not fat, right? Right? The above suspect, with at least 5 others, overtook a security guard at gunpoint. So they had a gun pointed at him, at gunpoint. They overpowered him with at least 5 others. So there are 6 people, maybe more, at least 5 others plus him. Tying him up with a rope in a parking lot at 4th and Main Streets. Then they removed 6 trucks loaded with over $1 million worth of designer clothing. Nike, Jordan shoes, maybe. Suspect and his associates, the other people, are considered to be armed and dangerous and well-dressed. Ha ha ha. Get it? Humor. Well-dressed. They stole designer clothes, so they're probably wearing the clothes. They're well-dressed. So funny. So the questions below. 11. Who is this man? He's the suspect. The armed robbery suspect. Armed is actually firearms, a weapon, some kind of arms, firearms. So firearms, yeah, a knife is not a firearm because you fire a gun, firearms. You're armed with a gun. To be armed means you have a gun. So firearm, he's a armed robbery suspect. Who drew this picture? The sketch artist. Not the victim. The artist is listening to the victim. What did the police think this man did? So here's a long explanation. He tied up a security guard at gunpoint, stole and drove away 6 trucks. Stole the truck and then drove away 6 trucks. So each person was driving a truck. And they're all loaded with luxury or designer clothing. So one more time. They think he is suspected of tying up a security guard at gunpoint, stealing and driving away 6 trucks loaded with designer goods. Designer goods or luxury clothing. And then where can you see this wanted poster? Right there, it says limited to police department circulation. So that means only in like the police department, the police building. I don't know why they have that question. Okay, next page, the information organization. So again, this page and the next page are very similar. Bernard Jackson's case. 1, his crime. He allegedly, so that's another word, allegedly. to allege something. That's when they say you did it. He allegedly did it, but it has not been proven in court yet. So anyway, let's just skip the allegedly, but that's a good word to know. Because in this case, he has been convicted of raping 2 women. The evidence, B, is the victim's testimony, and the reason for conviction is that the jury believed the victim's testimony. So B and C are connected. The problem is that 2 victims, they made a mistake in identity. And then part 2 is factors influencing the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. So this is all in lines 16 to 21. Right, there's those 5 factors. So the first one, A, sometimes they see pictures before they see the lineups. That kind of they prejudge in their mind. B, they become confused by many pictures, so many pictures and similar faces. C, the number of people and whether it's a live lineup. And D, trouble identifying, or ID. You can just say IDing. ID, ING, IDing. You have trouble IDing people of other races. And E, the police ask questions that have an effect on them. 3, witness experiment to test the reliability of police officers and ordinary people as witnesses. The experiment showed a film of crimes to both groups. The results were no difference in correctly remembering details. So that's interesting that the police aren't any better, or not any better than the average people at being witnesses. 4, why courts cannot exclude eyewitness testimony from trial. So U.S. courts depend almost completely on eyewitness testimony. Sometimes it is the only evidence to a crime. Right, so it's used very often. Sometimes it's the only thing they have for evidence. And then B, it's often correct. And that's in lines A. The answer is in lines 29 and 30. And B, the answer is right there in line 31. All right, and then the next page. So it's the same thing. So why did Bernard Jackson go to prison? They said he was convicted, actually, accused and convicted of raping 2 women. Was he guilty? No. At Jackson's trial, what did the 2 witnesses testify? Did the jury believe the 2 witnesses? They believed, or the witnesses testified that he was with them at another location at the time of the crime. Did the jury believe the 2 witnesses? No. Why did the victims identify Jackson as the man who had attacked them? He was similar in appearance to the guilty man. Some factors that affect eyewitness testimony is line 16 to 21. 5A, are police officers, are they better witnesses? No. How did psychologists test the idea? They showed a film of a crime to both groups. 6, why is eyewitness testimony important in American court? Because sometimes it's the only evidence and it is often correct. In an American court, number 7, who decides if the eyewitness testimony is correct or not? The jury. Why is eyewitness testimony a valuable part of the U.S. judicial system? Because it has rightly convicted a large number of guilty people. It works most of the time, but it's not perfect. All right, and just dictionary skills. Number 1, the lineup. It's most commonly used in baseball. 2, that's like in movies and TV or music, the lineup of TV shows. But number 3 here, it's a group of people. That's the correct definition used in that passage. And 2, value, the worth of something. Here it's ideals, it's the standards. What values does the society have? And then positive, it's definition number 2. I am without doubt, I am positive that he is the guilty man. All right, and the word forms. So both of these are verbs changing to nouns. And here, once again, the noun, it's the word forms are the same for part one. Like change could be a noun or a verb. Influence, film, attack. Those are all nouns and verbs. And the second one is when you change, you add ents or ents and change the verb to a noun. Insist becomes insistence. Depend becomes dependence. Appear becomes appearance. So again, it's good to do this by yourself first to kind of test yourself and then come back and listen for the answers. So pause, stop, do part one, part two, and then come back. And here are the answers. Many people believe that the weather influences verb, our feelings. However, the strength of this influence has not been proven. So that's the noun, second one. Unfortunately, John won't film our high school reunion next month. His films of social gatherings are always interesting, so we are very disappointed. Oh, Betty subs up. Betty subs up. John, so that's an interesting word. So I was born, my parents are Catholic. I was born when John F. Kennedy was president. So John was a very popular name, right? But John also has many meanings. John is also slang for toilet. Did you know? Where's the John? I have to go to the John. He's in the John. It's more North American slang. Yeah, and also John is a name for a customer of a prostitute. John. So whenever they talk about they arrest the women, they don't arrest the Johns. That means all the customers of these prostitutes. So great name, huh? Thanks a lot, Mom and Dad. But it's in the Bible, so it ain't so bad. John. In Spanish, it's Juan, Juan. It's a very common name. And Johann in German. And Jean, I think, in French. I'm not sure. Anyway. Number 3, people frequently write attacks on politicians in the newspapers. That's the noun. Attacks, it's a thing, and they're plural. But the politicians do not always pay attention to them. People usually attack the politician's dishonesty. So the first one is a noun, and it's plural, attacks. Second one, people usually attack. It's a verb. 4, Margaret was the only witness to a serious car accident. As soon as she witnessed the accident, so past tense, because was the only witness. And if you're witness, you know, whatever you witnessed, of course, it's before, right? So you're talking about in the past. You witnessed ED, the accident. She called ED, past tense, an ambulance, and the police. So witness and witnessed. 5, mistake. Susan and Emily are twin sisters. People frequently mistake Emily for Susan and Susan for Emily because they look alike. Sometimes such mistakes in identity are funny. So you could also say vice versa. People frequently mistake Emily for Susan and vice versa. And the opposite is also true. And Susan for Emily. Right? So that's a key term that's very commonly used in spoken English, and vice versa. First, I'll go and do it to you, and then vice versa, and then you can do it to me. Yeah, vice versa. All right, that'll be in your list of vocabulary this week that I'll send. And 6, the police didn't question. So negative, did not question the suspect until his lawyer arrived. They waited for his lawyer, and then they asked him very specific questions. All right, and part 2. When a baby is born, it depends on its parents completely. As it grows up, the child's dependence, ENCE, on its parents decreases. So, 2, Angela's coat and Debbie's coat, or it's better to say Angela and Debbie's coats, same thing. They don't differ in color. They are both blue, right? They're the same, so they don't differ. The only difference between the two coats is their size and material. Angela's coat is cotton, but Debbie's coat is wool. Interesting. 3, snow in April is an unusual occurrence in this area. In fact, snow doesn't occur very often, even in the winter. Only 2 or 3 inches fall during the entire season. So, unusual occurrence in this area. In fact, snow doesn't occur very often, even in winter, right? So it's very unusual. 4, the nurses didn't assist the doctor today, but they will help her during the operation tomorrow. So it's kind of saying, but is kind of saying the opposite, right? But they will do it tomorrow. The doctor will need their assistance to give her surgical instruments. Oh, it's a female doctor. You could also say the nurses will. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, the nurses did not assist the doctors today. And 5, the president made a special appearance on TV last night. He appeared, Edie, very calm, but his news was serious. When will Trump make his next appearance, huh? Did you hear? Trump is just nonstop. There's just nonstop things to talk about. He's just so stupid and crazy. So they had a press conference Saturday, I guess, in American time. And it was supposed to be everyone thought it was at the Four Seasons Hotel. It's a famous hotel brand, right? There in Gwanghwamun, there's a nice Four Seasons hotel. Yet it turned out they were at the Four Seasons like hardware store, like where you buy tools and supplies. And it was next to like some dirty porno bookstore in this bad part of town in Philadelphia. Like, what? You cannot make this up. This is worse. Well, it is. It's a really bad reality show. No. Yeah, so, and everyone thought, a lot of reporters, the Four Seasons Hotel in Philadelphia had to say, it's a mistake. The press conference is not here. They didn't tell us that. It's crazy. Next, the last thing is the vocabulary. And you can do the vocabulary on your own. Page 190. And we'll have our quiz. I mistakenly said midterm, but it'll be quiz. We'll have quiz 3 next week, and then a week after that, week 12 actually is the midterm exam. But I'll talk about that live in class tomorrow when we meet. Okay, so part F, vocabulary in context. John, there he is again. John was in the Army for 2 years. At the end of his military service, he was happy to become a civilian again. So civilians and non-civilians. So non-civilians are military or government officials, yeah. Last week, an armed robber shot 2 men while he robbed the Citibank. Afterwards, an ambulance took the 2 victims to the hospital. 3. Tommy stole a car, but the police caught and arrested him because Tommy was guilty. He went to prison for 6 months. So that means he was convicted, right? He went to prison. He was guilty. Because you can go to jail and not be guilty, right? Go to jail, then you go to court, and you're found not guilty. So you don't go to prison if you're not guilty. 4. Kathy saw the 2 men who robbed Citibank. As a result of her testimony, her words, in court, the 2 men were convicted and put into prison. Dun, dun, dun. When I was in somewhere in Eastern Europe, the police were jokingly said, if I didn't pay, then I had to. This is with the symbol for prison bars. Prison. 5. When the police investigate a crime, they look for evidence such as fingerprints, footprints, hair, and clothing. 6. Mr. Michaels worked for the same company for 25 years. 6 months before retiring, he lost his job and he couldn't find another one. He has become very bitter toward his old company. 7. Many people believe that Ronald had murdered his wife, but he was innocent. Despite the cold weather, Kay went to work without her coat, number 8. 9, Chris and his brother, look very similar. They're both tall and thin, and both have light hair and blue eyes. And 10, the waitress made a mistake. She gave me coffee, but I ordered tea. All right, and then there's no second reading, so this is the last chapter we do in the book. So you can go ahead and do page 190 and 191 on your own for homework. You can check your answers with the reading in the front of the book. See you later.